and welcome to the Rachel Holmes Lifestyle Show. How are you doing? Thanks for all the feedback. I'm glad you are enjoying the show. And today is another exceptionally interesting interview with Sarica. And we are talking about food fermentation, which is something that's really big at the moment, starting to gather more and more momentum. Really interesting food preparation. Plus, we talk Chinese medicine. We talk about starting your day off in the right way and how that can have such a massive impact on your health. You're going to love this interview. Sarica is just fabulous, and here it is.
Well, hi, Sarica, and welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great. Thank you, Rachel. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on the show. So on this momentous day, I always start my interviews with finding out the backstory, finding out how you have got to where you've gotten to, your experiences, your expertise, and how it's all come together at this point.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, my background is in traditional Chinese medicine. I had, anytime I think a person goes into natural medicine, they get there because there's been something that's gone on in their life that, got them to that place. It's not the low-hanging fruit, that's for sure. And so I had my own digestive issues and hormonal issues, and the Western medical model, while it has its strengths, it wasn't able to help me with that. And so I had received wonderful care with acupuncture and herbal medicine, and that just moved the dial for me. I was so touched by that. And so I went and got my degree in traditional Chinese medicine, and part of my training with that, and also my own love throughout, was also with nutrition. And so I have worked with natural medicine and then also with whole food and traditional food preparation for a number of years now. And I just find that they merge so beautifully together. And so I've used that certainly personally in my life and for my family. But most certainly for my patients and now for more people. So I find that they go so well together because it just works with the body's vitality.
That's fantastic. And Chinese medicine, was it a series of interventions that got you there? Had you tried lots of other different routes and then it was Chinese medicine that really hit the spot for you?
It was, exactly. I mean, I had done other types of natural remedies and therapies, homeopathy and chiropractic, and they're wonderful and they're very helpful. But I really felt like it was the acupuncture and then the herbs that really did it for me. And so I had gotten my degree in business and was living in northern Arizona and had this tremendous recovery with this type of medicine. And so started researching schools, and then I left for 5 years and got that master's degree. And it was transformative. I mean, it was transformative. I sat in that first class of theory of traditional Chinese medicine. And it was the craziest thing, Rachel. I felt like I was being given back a language that I didn't know I'd forgotten.
Wow.
I mean, it was profound. And so even through the struggles, because being raised in Western society, I was not privy to kind of looking at the world with the eyes of Chinese medical theory. And so it was a big shift in my thinking, but at the same time, it really just kind of made so much sense to me that I couldn't wait to share it with people. Couldn't wait. It's so cool. I love helping people see themselves and illness and this sort of thing, not as a diagnosis that they're stuck with, but as a progression of information that we get to work with so that they don't feel lost to a diagnosis. So to me, it's powerful on a mental and an emotional plane as well as a physical plane.
And who comes to find you? Who is it? People that have, keep hitting brick walls with traditional medicine and not finding the cures? Are they people with chronic illness? Who's coming? Who's finding you?
It's kind of a funny thing because I practice at home. I don't advertise. I'm only word of mouth. And I love it that way because people who come to me, it's because they've had a good experience and they want to share that with the people in their lives. And so I get to see everybody. I see entire families from grandkids through the parents and the grandparents. And that's so wonderful. I love that. I deal with a lot of mental, emotional things because a big part of Chinese medicine is also recognizing the emotional content as it relates back to physical ailments. And every organ system has emotions that are tied to them if things are out of balance. And so And again, it's kind of nice, especially when working with children or if someone who maybe has been diagnosed with depression or anxiety, something along those lines. Again, to help them see a broader picture on themselves and to give them hope and faith in the ability to work with something that moves the dial for them, raises their vitality. And in fact, that, the thing that we're seeing there, the ADHD or the depression, these types of manifestations, they're just signs from the body that it's needing some kind of different support. And so, right, I mean, it is folks who come and they've been in kind of more of a Western medical model, and they find that it has its limits and that it actually sometimes can be damaging in its own way. And so to not, poo-poo that and to put that down, it's not that. And I'm not one to say, oh, walk away from it completely. Mm-hmm. But again, to help someone to feel more empowered and to feel a brighter light within themselves is so important. And so the discussion around that's very key. But then also, of course, the treatment itself, which helps that person to go from a fight or flight position, where they're in a sympathetic override, to get them into a parasympathetic override so that their body then heals itself. And so folks will ask me, well, does acupuncture treat this or does it treat that, or, whatever, those questions. And I can honestly say, yeah, it does, because what it's doing is it's setting the stage for the body to recover itself.
Gosh, that's very, very, very poignant. And so where do you start? Is it someone, this is the big picture.
Yeah.
We look at stress and sleep and nutrition and, the quality of the food preparation. Yeah. There's just, so many big rocks to go with. So where do you start?
Well, I actually usually start with people and I have them tell me about the first thing they do in the day. I want to know, how do you start your day? Like, what's that look like? Don't put any filters on it. No editing here. I want to know what's the first thing you do when you get out of bed. And then tell me about what you're eating, and not just what you're eating, but when you're eating it. I mean, I really want to just listen to someone so that I can hear how they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And I can say, gosh, you're doing this part great. This is a part over here where I can see where this is probably playing into some issue for you. Mm-hmm. Let's maybe make a little change here, so that it's not that it's an overwhelm or a judgment or anything like that, but rather it's us working together, me giving them very basic tools where I see maybe some shortcomings in the behavior of what they're doing. And oftentimes, Rachel, I'm sure you see this in your practice, folks think they're doing the right thing.
Always, yeah.
Always. And it can be so damaging. And so that helps them to feel better, like, oh, gosh, here it is. I thought I was doing the right thing for myself, and that might not be at all. Yeah. And so we work together as a team, which is so beautiful. I love that.
I do. I love that. I love that you start with the day, start with the first thing in the morning routine. And many of my viewers watching this will be women in their 40s. Exactly what you've said, doing everything that they think is right. They are eating, the organic food and the grass-fed food, and they are exercising. And maybe they're finding that they think that they're doing everything right, but they are gaining weight, especially weight around the midsection. Maybe they're experiencing ill health, niggles that have never been there before, that they've sailed through the 20s and the 30s, and then suddenly things start to pile up. It becomes, what's happening to me? My emotional health is being compromised. My mental health is being compromised. My physical health is being compromised. So where does that kind of person go? How do you help them?
I love when that person shows up with me. I mean, I love it, because I'm in that boat. And here it was. I mean, I was a practitioner of natural medicine, for well over a decade, organic, grass-fed, gluten-free, and eating traditional food preparation methods, wrote a book about it. Mm-hmm. And even still, I hit about 42 and those pounds started coming on in the middle there. And I thought, now this is completely unfair. I am doing all these right things and this is happening. So what gives here? And that's really, Rachel, that's where I was so grateful when I came upon the notion around structuring a day around food. That's a big one. What I've seen a lot of people talk about is how important it is to eat many small meals through the day. And that just is something that will continue to drive cellular inflammation in us when we have the glucose and the insulin floating around in the bloodstream. So one of the biggest things that I get excited about sharing with people is just helping them to structure their day different around food. Definitely when you do that and you give yourself these fallow periods where you're not eating between meals, where you're letting your body process the meal that has been consumed, you got to be sure that the last time you ate was nutritionally dense, or else it's going to be really, really hard to go, 5-6 hours between your meals with only water in between. Yeah. And so to me, and people don't talk about that.
Yeah,
they do not talk about that. And so that's something that in my practice has been really a dial mover for so many women this age. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, that's an important theory to put into play, because every time that we eat, what we're doing is our body then needs to work with the transportation and the transformation of the foods that we've taken in. So if we're always putting something down the pipe this way, we are not allowing, this proper dissemination of the information we brought into our bodies. And so that's very important. And then from a biomedical perspective, the thing that's important about that is that every time we eat, one, it's a huge oxidative stress on the body. Yeah. It's a big deal to eat, to take a piece of something and to humanize it, to make sure it's safe with the immune system. So the immune system comes into play every time we eat. And then there are so many processes of digestion, different pH balances and biome species that are activated. There are so many attributes to digestion. And so again, if we're always bringing something down the pipe this way, we're not getting a clear direction on what we should be doing with the digestion of a given meal. And so nothing ever gets its own just due. And so the thing is that there may have been a time historically where it maybe made a little bit of sense to kind of nosh as you were out in the field, But the fact of the matter is most of us sit around most of the time and we don't have that physical burn off the way that our ancestors did. So that's a big deal. And then the flip side of that, especially living in the United States, although I feel like in the US, we kind of set the tone for the rest of the world on how things are. And what's happened is that we have access to so much food all the time. And it is food that is simple carbohydrates. It just drives cellular inflammation like nobody's business. But we're designed to eat when we're around food like that, because in the human history, that was not common. It was common for us to have periods of famine. And so now we have to kind of create these little places of famine in our day. So it's a real mental game for the human experience at this point. So it's this kind of like, let's educate around this so that it makes sense and learn to work with that structure.
That's really interesting because, as you say, we are kind of, it's ingrained in us that we need to be eating small and often, keep snacking through the day, when actually the opposite is true. We don't really need that. Yeah. And I wanted to touch a little bit on fermented foods and food preparation, because this is a very unknown topic in the UK. Not many people talking about it and don't really know what fermented food is. And we're only just starting to hear about bone broth and this kind of preparation. So it would be great if you could give me an overview on that and what it means.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Do we have like a month of Sundays to Yeah, the traditional food preparation, I got to tell you, that came about in my life because my son was having some major issues with his health. And we were doing all the right things like we talked about. And I'm like, why is his little developing body having to allocate resources here? Like, what's going on? He was having a lot of cavities. And so a lot of people would look at that and say, well, then he needs to brush better. Well, that may have been the case, but I really come from the standpoint of toothbrushes are pretty new on the scene, and we can look at archaeological digs and people have totally healthy, beautiful teeth, and they did not have toothbrushes. And so to me, it's what's going on internally that is needed for that. Well, one of the things that I sorted out in our journey of being this all natural, organic, gluten-free family was that it wasn't enough. And that really, it was humbling. It was very, very humbling. And it was a real instigator to me of, okay, so what do we need to do different beyond everything we're doing already? And so that's when I started looking at traditional food preparation methods, because that's the one difference, is not just using good ingredients, but making sure that they're prepared in a way that is bioavailable to our bodies. And so one idea around that is simple fermentation. And so one of the things that I suggest to folks is to use basic fermentation on creating things like grains and beans and nuts and seeds. I show people how to do that, but we can also do that with dairy. And of course, that would be yogurt and milk kefir. These would be foods like that. What happens in the process of doing this, Rachel, is alchemy. I mean, it's incredible. It is the most amazing thing. And what happens is we take these larger macronutrients, you know, these bigger protein molecules, bigger carbohydrate and fat molecules. And through basic fermentation, what happens is these macronutrients are broken down into smaller components that are easier for our bodies to put to use. And that is incredibly important with the stress, again, that people are under today, because when we are under stress, one of the first things that goes is proper digestion. You know, the body's not thinking about digesting. And so hydrochloric acid for mineral breakdown is gone. So when we work with these basic methods of just basic fermentation, we are making that food so much easier to put to use in our tired little bodies. And so over time, that helps us to build vitality. And so, for instance, in our family, what that looked like was my son has not had any cavities in the, 6-7 years since we first got that. And so that was a big, big deal. So fermentation is one. And again, so that's yogurt. Like a chutney is something that in olden days would have been a naturally fermented chutney, because we didn't have refrigeration and cold storage until, quite recently. And so fermentation was actually a process by which foods were preserved. Now, one of the cool things that happens is, we get this breakdown of these macronutrients, but another thing that happens, which is so cool, is that we actually get an entirely new nutrition profile that is generated. So like you can take a food that in its kind of plain form is very low in vitamin C, but with fermentation, so cabbage is a good example of this. With fermentation and making sauerkraut, the vitamin C just out the roof. And that's how Captain Cook kept his shipmates healthy on these long voyages, as they would use fermented cabbage. And people were dying of scurvy. And through the fermentation process, this helped to keep them alive on these long voyages.
Wow.
I know, because if they try and take oranges, that would last for like maybe a week and then they'd go bad. But the natural preservation process of fermentation would allow them to keep these barrels of fermented cabbage, and they could use that as their rations for months on end.
Wow.
I know, so cool.
Can we get the information on this from your website? Is this something that
sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think probably the best place to go is my website. It's called naturallylivingtoday.com. When folks go there, I always ask that they put in their information, and you'll get like 10 things to help your health or whatever. It's a little free giveaway that I have. But the real gift comes in the newsletter that I put out every couple of weeks, because my sister has been a chef for almost 3 decades. Wow. And I've dragged her into working with me now. And so she creates these awesome recipes, like the one she's got coming up here in the States. We're going to soon be having Thanksgiving. So she's going to be coming up with a fermented cranberry relish for the turkey.
Love that.
And so there's always good recipes that I put in there, and tons of information around fermentation and traditional food preparation methods.
Very interesting. And tell us a little bit about metabolic balance and how that you incorporate that into the work that you do.
Yes, absolutely. Well, metabolic balance is something that, again, I wasn't looking for another thing to add to my practice. So many hats. But when I found it, I thought, no, that's exactly what I needed, because I'll tell you, I had gone to kind of left field with all these traditional food preparation technique methods, and I thought, oh my gosh, a lot of people just want to know how to eat real food. And I was way over here fermenting all that real food. And so I needed a bridge, and metabolic balance, it's so popular in Europe. You guys have been using it over there for a couple of decades, but here in the States, it's new, very new. There aren't too many of us here who help with that. And so the structure of it is what I used my tummy is trim now. It's amazing to me. I'm almost 46 years old. I can't believe it's the flattest my stomach has ever been.
Brilliant.
It's awesome. And it's because of building that structure. And like I was talking about earlier. So metabolic balance to me is, especially when a woman or a man, we get to the thing you were saying, the little niggly bits that, we're not a problem when we're younger. And I call it the shenanigans point.
Yeah.
It's that point that you get to where you're like, oh, the shenanigans are catching up with me. And it's different for everyone. But I don't know, it just seems to me like that point's coming earlier and earlier for people, and for a lot of reasons that we could talk a long time about. But one of the things is the processed foods and the stress we do put on ourselves, and that lack of structure around, how to time your day around food. So to have metabolic balance, to help someone with that, what I've seen is that I always give the 8 rules of metabolic balance to my patients and to my clients. But the thing that really moves that dial initially is when they are working with their personalized nutrition plan. Mm-hmm. That sets the tone on a metabolic shift for that person like nobody's business. Yeah. It's amazing. And I love it how folks, as they get into it, even before like a 2-week mark, they're saying to me, I am thinking so much more clearly. My digestion is so much better. It's those kind of attributes that aren't necessarily the thing that drives a person to making a change like that. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. Most of us, we're here, we show up for things like that because we don't like the way we're looking in our body. It's a vanity issue. But it's these, I think, way deeper aspects to healing that make a person stay committed to what they're doing. Yeah. I think about eating between like my 5-hour mark, and it's enough to make me bloat just thinking about it, because my body, and I used to be a hypoglycemic wiener. I really had issues with hypoglycemia. So for me now to go, 5, 6, 7 hours with just water between meals is like the most liberating experience ever. I love it. It gives me so much more bandwidth for everything else.
Of course, yeah. Sarica, where can people find more about you then if they're interested in diving in a little bit deeper with this?
Cool. Yeah. Well, one thing I did is I did a webinar around this. Okay. And so I have that in replay mode. If folks would like to understand that a little bit more deeply, it's LAPIS method. So LAPIS method .com. And then a /replay. So that's the presentation I did. But again, just getting connected to me is just going to my standard blog, which is again, naturallylivingtoday.com. And those are 2 good ways for us to get
on social media. We can come and say hi to you on Facebook.
For sure that. Yes, absolutely. Gosh. Well, the book that I wrote around traditional food preparation is called The Funky Kitchen.
Oh, I love that. Funky Kitchen. Yeah. Is it still available on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. Yes, it is. And I have a 6-week course around it and all this good stuff. So yeah, The Funky Kitchen can be found on Amazon. And then The Funky Kitchen with Sarica on Facebook is a great way to
we'll go and connect with you. And just a little quick one. Is making fermented foods, is it really difficult? Is it time consuming?
Well, it's time consuming, but it's not your time consuming.
Okay.
It takes time to do the fermentation process, but that's one of the things that I feel like is one of the gifts I like to share with people, is that when it comes to doing these methods, at the outset, you need a little bit of your time, just like you would with like opening a box of mac and cheese and, making that. We still have to have some effort, but at the very beginning, that's where you're needed. And then you go away. You walk away from the thing you have put into motion. And then you come back after the fermentation process is done, and you bake it or you eat it the way that it is. I mean, it just depends on what you've done. So the fermenting needs its own time, but you just have to set the stage for this.
I love that. And I thought many people from the UK are going to be really interested in all the information that you've shared with us today. And I know you're coming to say hello on your blog. So thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, everyone.
Great.